Welcome into another Sun City story here. I am Mike Tipton. Today, my guest joining me, the one and only, the legendary Rick Kern, of all kinds of band fame. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that Rick Kern has done, but you, sir, are going to be launching a podcast coming up soon. Can you let the people know what the podcast is?
Yeah, it's kind of an extension of things that I've been doing for the last several years. I had oh a blog site that I started back in around 2007, and hooked up with a lot of my old friends, musician friends from way back, and and it just kind of gravitated towards something else that needed to happen. And my wife said one day, you're bringing all these friends together. Why don't you do a concert, bring some of these old bands back to El Paso and see how that goes. So we tried it. We did one in 2009 at the Lancers East out on the, east side of town, and it went really well. A lot of people liked it. The musicians liked playing for it. The audience, they just loved it. And I mean, we had like my old buddy Joe Gomez from UTEP. He was sitting on the front row, and you must be doing something right when you see an old man crying because he's seeing the old bands that he used to see up on stage again. And so it was really a neat thing. So yeah, I did that for 8 years. We did our last in 2016. Rod Crosby was my co-producer, and it went really well. And so I thought, now let's move on. We're all kind of hunkered in our homes, with all this COVID stuff going on and everything. I thought, why not just start a podcast? People need things to do while they're cleaning out their closets and garage and stuff while they're home. So here we are. I'm thinking about really getting it going. I've got some equipment ordered, and here I am with you today doing my first live, um, you know, video of my intention to do this podcast. It's going to be called Talkin' Rock Radio, and pretty excited about it.
So, what is it that people would be able to expect from the podcast? So, you said Talking Rock Radio. That kind of opens itself up to a lot of different things there. What could people expect whenever they finally tune in?
Well, that's a good question. I was going to keep this thing geared primarily towards musicians. Guys that I've played with through the years, and guys that I grew up knowing, and not necessarily played with them, but knew them very well and knew their bands, and went out and got to know their bands real well. And I got to thinking, well, you know, why not do a show that brings back the memories and the stories and the anecdotes of that people, want to, these band members want to share. They want to share their stories and their history. And I thought, nobody's doing this in El Paso. But then a lot of people don't know the knowledge of the old bands and everything, but yet there's still a lot of people out there that want to hear it. They miss the stories. A lot of these musicians left El Paso, and I'm still connected to a lot of them. And so as long as I can be able to offer that, bring it out in the form of a podcast and let people hear the stories that these musicians want to tell. And I'm sure some of them won't be very good to put on the podcast because it may get us shut down real quick. So we got to be careful with our content, But no, all kidding aside, I think it'll be really something good for El Paso, and a lot of my friends that left El Paso want to engage in this effort, in this endeavor, and so I'm excited about doing it. We'll see how it goes. It could be something that could really last a long time. I've got quite a few episodes that I'm working on already. Some pretty interesting content, and so while I wait for my equipment to get here and get some hands-on experience with it, which will happen in the next 30 days, I've got some coming in on Friday, and I'm ordering a special mic tomorrow that I'm really excited about. I just got off the phone with California a little while ago and talked to them some more about what it is I'm doing, and so they're on board with me. So we'll see, man. I'm all excited about it, Mike.
Talk and Rock Radio. I'm looking forward to that podcast because I love history, and like I love the history here down in El Paso. Like we have such a rich history and culture, but it seems like it's gotten buried in just an avalanche of a bunch of different stuff that we've got coming our way, right? So I love the fact that you're going to highlight this, and you, sir, are a part of all the music history that we've had here in El Paso, right?
Well, you're kind. I do go back a few years with it. I started out um, as a youngster playing in a garage band. The typical neighborhood kids. And um, I always wanted to be a drummer. And that'll be one of my episodes. Probably I may start out with that episode. How I was inspired as a youngster. I was 13 years old, and I would go to the Skylanes bowling alley on Thursday nights to watch my dad bowl. He was in the downtown Lions Club, but they had a bowling team that the club sponsored, and they would go there on Thursday nights to the Skylanes bowling alley, and I would tag along. And I saw my very first concert. I don't call it a concert. They were a local band that was playing in the club there called the Little Dipper Lounge, and it was the Bobby Fuller Four. And I was just so excited about this group and how they sounded. They were just incredible. And uh, I just, without taking the wind out of the sail of my first episode, I'm gonna, kind of leave it with that. But it was that drummer that I saw that has become a dear friend of mine through the years. Dalton Powell is his name, and he inspired me. And I just told him the other day, as many years as I've known him, we've never really talked that much about how he was my inspiration to become a drummer. And so uh, that happened. I played with a lot of local bands, and then when I went to college, at UTEP, I was in a band called the Basic Sound, and that was formed by two of the guys that I met in the choir or the choral department at UTEP, and and we all decided, let's put a band together, and we did. And we played 6 nights a week at the Knights Club, which was the Roadway Inn at Bassett Center at the time. And they had another club out on Dyer called the Jet Set at the Roadway Inn out there. And so we would some nights play 3 nights out there, and then 3 nights at the other club, and then sometimes 6 nights at one. So it kept me going while I was in college, and and got to do what I really love, and that was playing music and performing and just living it. It was so great. And then after I got out of college, my wife and I decided, let's put everything we own into Beacon Storage, and we went on the road out to California, and that's another episode of my podcast. But we did it for 6 years. My wife says, well, I thought we were going to maybe just do this for 5 or 6 months. That's what she told some of her friends, but it ended up being 6 years. And we did like 3 tours of Canada. We toured all over the US. The only part of the US we didn't really play in was about 4 or 5 of the New England states. In Hawaii, we didn't get to Hawaii, but we were all over the United States, and played with some, billed with some big names, including Elvis, Diana Ross, Isaac Hayes, Fifth Dimension, Jackson 5. We were billed on the same Sahara billboard sign at the Sahara in Lake Tahoe, and that took place in 1974. My band was only 2 weeks rehearsed with guys I'd never played with before. This is after our first band that went out there broke up, and our agent loved us so much. She says, "You guys are ready to go play," and I guess it was just meant to happen. The voices sounded really good together. It was a pretty strong vocal group, and yeah, and went from there, and we just had a good time on the road. We did it for a long time, and then I eventually moved back to LA and hooked up with one of the 2 guys that were in my in one of those groups, and we started another group, which was the second version of my Tapestry band, and that one was that was quite a neat group. That had some really super talented musicians in it. Our guitar player, after that group disbanded, we were together about a year playing a lot of clubs in LA. And after we disbanded, our guitar player went to work for the Spencer Davis group, which was a very famous group of the 60s. And after that, Freddie Fender, he was his guitar player for a while. So the guys continued to do their thing, and all of us have remained to be somewhat in the music business. The guitar player I was just telling you about is now the entertainment director at Harrah's in San Diego, and so he gets to rub elbows with people like Paul McCartney and Foreigner and lots of big names, and that come and play the room that they have there at Harrah's. So I stay in touch with these guys quite a bit. We're like brothers. We loved what we did, and we still love reminiscing and seeing how we're doing and all of that. So that's kind of what I'll be doing with the podcast.
Whenever you mention some of those names, like especially, early on with you, whenever you mention, being on that same billboard with a name like Diana Ross or Elvis, was there like one of those moments where you sit there and you think back to yourself, I can't believe I'm here?
Yeah, especially since we were only 2 weeks rehearsed. We had been rehearsing. I'd been driving from Newport Beach up to Huntington Beach for like every day for like 2 weeks, rehearsing in the keyboard player's living room. And but we learned real fast. I mean, we picked it up real quick, and we were all singers. And but it just came together so fast, Michael, that I just, when the agent came to hear us, she said, I'm ready to start booking you guys. But we had no idea that we were going to be going to the Sahara and Lake Tahoe. My wife, I called her that afternoon after we got the call from the agent, and I said, how soon can we have everything packed? We're going to go play a gig. She says, where are we going? And I said, the Sahara and Lake Tahoe, Nevada. And she said, what? You're going to do what? I said, yeah, we're going to be going over there. They had a band that had to leave, that I guess there was medical issues or something, and so they had to cancel. And I said, Doris has got us booked in there, and we're supposed to be there for a week. Well, we got there, and I mean, the first thing we see is Elvis on the sign. I thought, oh my gosh! Of course, he was playing the big room. We were just playing the big lounge that overlooked the casinos. But that in itself was pretty exciting, though. Just to be doing that. And but they liked us so much that they held us over for 6 weeks. And so during that time, Elvis was there the first week. And then I think after that, it was probably the Jackson Five, and we got to be really close with them. I mean, we were partying with them at night and went to the clubs and danced with them and went back to their dressing room after their shows and mingled with them. I mean, Michael was only 14 then. But Johnny Jackson, their drummer, I became really close with him. And it was just a great experience. After that, I think it was Isaac Hayes, then Fifth Dimension, then Diana Ross. I think I hit all of them. Those are the ones that were there while we were there. But yeah, seeing the name Tapestry up there on that sign, with the likes of those incredible performers, it was pretty weird, man. Pretty nice. To answer your question, yeah, it was an exciting time, and I'm just glad to say that I was able to do it. And we didn't get to know all of them, but we did get to know the Jacksons, and we did get to know. Well, we met some of the others. I think I met Isaac Hayes, but didn't really get to chat with him much. Elvis, we didn't get to know. He occupied the 12th floor of the hotel all by himself. And that was part of his deal. When he was performing at a hotel, he would get the whole floor. That was part of his rider. And for his protection and all of that. So, but still, it was pretty neat.
You speak of like your friendship that you developed with the drummer for the Jackson Five, Johnny Jackson. I want to say what you said the name was. whenever you look at like your Rolodex of people that you've become friends with, and that you know you can like text them. I had to use a really old word there whenever I said Rolodex. I don't know when the last time someone had a Rolodex was, but like again, I know I look young. I'm not that young. So whenever you look at it, like your contacts in your cell phone, you go through that and you scroll through that. Is there a name there that kind of like pops out? You're like, wow, like this journey that I took allowed me to be friends with this individual.
You know, there is a guy, in fact, I mentioned to you earlier that I was on the phone with California today. Well, this was the son of a really dear friend of mine, and his name is Don Klow. Don Klow is not an everyday name that like Elvis or Isaac Hayes or Stevie Nicks or something like that. Don Klow was the front man for a band called Command Performance, and Command Performance was playing across the street from the Sahara when we were performing there, and we just out of curiosity wanted to see what was going on over at Harrah's. So we would change our costumes from our show and put on street clothes and run across the street to check out this band called Command Performance. And I tell you what, Michael, it was like it was the inspiration that really raised us to the next level. Yeah, we were playing at a great place, but after we saw that band and saw what a really great vocal show band is all about, I have to compare them to the likeness of, say, the Osmond Brothers. Whenever they were, young kids on the Andy Williams show back in the early days. This is going to be pre-you, but it was really that kind of quality to hear those kind of harmonies and their kind of comedy and they could tug at your heart, they could make you laugh, they could make you cry, they could engage the audience. And it was that moment that we just said, man, we want to be like them. And so, I say this and I say it often, that you got to be careful what you wish for, because sometimes things can happen, and for the right reasons. I think God is very plays into this a whole lot. I just, when I met these guys, I thought, man, these guys are so incredible. I want to be like them. I want to play in the rooms like they play. I mean, and they were doing the version of what we were doing at Harrah's. And of course, we're doing it at the Sahara, but I wanted all of our rooms to be like that. I want this to keep going. And so basically it was about, I'm going to say within the year, I got a phone call one day from Don Klow, the front man. And he says, Rick, we just lost our bass player, Guy Paulette. He's going back to Quebec. Do you have any bass players that you can think that are out of work or need a gig? And I said, man, I've got the perfect guy for you all. He played in my very first band called the Sounds Royale Show. That was the band that left El Paso and went on the road. And I said, this guy plays sax, he plays flute, he sings, he's a comedian, he plays bass, he plays some guitar, and he's a great front man. And so Don said, how do I get hold of him? They called him, they flew him to Cincinnati because they were there recording their next album. And they got Wayne there. Wayne Mills is his name. They loved him. They hired him on the spot, and the rest is history. He became one of the members of the Command Performance. So the reason why I'm telling you this story is because it was soon after that their agent, Arnie Prager out of Chicago, had talked to Don and them about my band. And they said, yeah, we performed with, they were in Lake Tahoe, went across the street, and we would love to perform with them. And so Arnie booked us to perform with Command Performance at it was called the Winnipeg Inn in Canada. And the shows would start like 4:30 in the afternoon. We would do a show, they'd do a show, we'd do a show, they'd do a show. And this went on till about 12 or, 12:30 at night. And that was tremendous. To answer your question, Don Klow is a guy that I talk to at least once or twice a week. He was amazing. He was an incredible musician. He lives in Las Vegas still, and He got out of the music business. Believe it or not, he's 85 years old and he drives an 18-wheeler. And the guy, he makes good money driving the truck. He's not feeding his love for music by doing that. But we talk all the time, like you and I are doing right now, about the old days and what it was like. And he knows a lot of famous musicians and people. Like he knew the Four Freshmen, and one of the rooms that we were going into when we were on the road was a place in Pennsylvania, and it was a really neat club. And the Four Freshmen were coming in when we were leaving, and I would have given anything to just have an extra day or two to be able to go see those guys, because we were doing some of their music in one of our medleys, and which we learned from Command Performance. We kind of took their formula of doing an oldies medley, but we took our own version our own song choices from the same groups. Like we did one from the Four Freshmen, like they did. They did the Andrews Sisters, or no, they did the McGuire Sisters. We did the Andrews Sisters, and we both did the Mills Brothers because that was real deep voices. And then we would turn right around and do the Andrews Sisters, which are real high voices. But that kind of showed our vocal talent to two extremes: low voices to high voices. And back in those days, we could sing like that. Not anymore. We got too many cobwebs in there now.
I, I guarantee you, I've never hit a high note in my life.
Oh, well, there's always a first, Michael.
Well, maybe I don't know if I've ever told you about my kid. I have an 8-year-old named Jericho, and he is an absolute giant. I guarantee you, one day he's going to land on me, and I will hit that high.
Yeah, well, that could happen for sure, man.
You were talking about, like, going to Winnipeg and playing in, Lake Tahoe and places like that. And before we get into, the nuts and bolts about El Paso's history with music and all that, I want to know a little bit more about you. Which one of those areas would you say, like, out of all your travels, is like that place where every time you went, the crowd was always electric?
Ooh, that's a good question. The clubs in California that we played, there was one club that we grand opened with my very first band, the Sounds Royale Show, and that was one that Wayne was in, and we had a girl. There was 4 guys and a girl, and it was a room called Charlie Brown's. We grand opened that room. It was in Huntington Beach, and it was a room that people went there to see a show. And we played several rooms like that. A lot of the rooms that we played, we didn't go back, not for any particular reason, except that we were on the road. And so we were traveling all over all the time with that second group I had called Tapestry. The first group we were based out of Orange County, and we just pretty much stayed there. We did play the Hyatt Regency in San Francisco. We played Del Webb's Townhouse in Phoenix. But the rest of the time, we were doing things like the Disneyland Hotel, the Newporter Inn, Charlie Brown's, several other chains that were out there, and those were pretty cool and pretty consistent. The rooms, they would go there and sit in front of you and want to watch a show, or of course there would usually be a dance floor off to the side, so they could dance if they wanted to, without disturbing the people that came to just sit and drink and watch, But the rooms like in Lake Tahoe, and another one in Florida that we loved, it was the Marco Beach Hotel. That was a showroom that was really incredible. They didn't have a dance floor. It was just a real showroom. And when I say shows, I mean people are coming to be entertained, not just hear music and dance. Like, clubs in El Paso pretty much they're not showrooms. They're clubs, okay? And you usually go there to drink, and pick up chicks. I mean, that's what the bars are for. I mean, back in the day, that's what we did, and they're still there for the same reasons, But you usually don't see shows per se. Now, I have to qualify that because I managed a group for about 8 years here called PT and the Cruisers, and they were more like a show band, or their music very danceable in all just about all the rooms they did their shows had had dance floors in them so people could dance, but in El Paso you normally don't see bands that are typically a show band. And when I say shows usually entail medleys. They entail comedy routines. They entail engaging with the audience. Uh, and when I say engaging, I mean really have their attention. And not saying that every room we ever played was a perfect room for that. I can tell you some nightmare rooms that some of these agents put us in. Like there was one in Calgary, Canada, and the first thing that they said to us was, now we don't want you drawing on the walls in your rooms or painting anything on the walls or whatever. We're going, what are you talking about? I don't know what kind of groups they were used to booking in there, but we were not one of those, so we we had to play rock music all night because that's all they wanted in this club was to hear you know uh, rock music that they could dance to and everything. And how many times can you play the same thing? I mean, we had maybe 10 or 12 pretty good rock songs, by Grand Funk and some other groups, but it was not really what we wanted to be doing. And we called the agent the next day, and I said, you got to get us out of here. They don't want us and we don't want to be here. So it's not always, going to be perfect. Sometimes the agents mess up a little bit, especially ones that don't work with you all the time, and we had a couple of those in Canada that were like that, that thought that they knew they were going to put us in the right room and it didn't work out. But
whenever you talk about those rooms where it seems like everything's just gonna go wrong, like how often does that happen? Because that seems like it would be a nightmare scenario for somebody, because you want to do like this certain routine and they say no, we only want this, we want you to be a one-trick pony. Like how often did that happen? Because like I said, that seems like a nightmare.
if you have a really good agent, and we were blessed, by that. We had good agents in LA, we had good agents in Chicago, and I got to tell you this: we were some of the best rooms we ever played were mafia controlled rooms. Like in Las Vegas and Lake Tahoe. You're working rooms that are definitely connected. And I'm not going to say that many in Vegas that we didn't do Vegas. We did Lake Tahoe, but we didn't really have that much experience there. But the ones that we played in Cleveland and Ohio, all over Ohio area. Uh, there's a lot of those kind of rooms up there. And I tell you what, the best rooms in the business. I mean, they took good care of us. We did our job. That's what we were there to do. And people would go in there expecting to see a show. That's what they were. Most of them were really elaborate, really nice. Some of them were like a cigar bar. They'd have that off to the side. Dinner clubs. People go have a nice dinner and they'd stick around and watch the show. Uh, those were the kind of rooms that we loved playing. And there were quite a few of those in Iowa that we played too that were pretty interesting. We thought, well, what are we going to see in Iowa? A bunch of people driving in on their John Deere tractors, and stuff off the cornfields or whatever. But no, it wasn't that way at all, man. We were totally wrong with that one. We ended up playing some pretty neat rooms, and one of them was called Avanti Rastrelli's. It was an Italian restaurant, and I think it's still there. And one of them, I think it's in Warren, Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's where it is, but my memory serves me right. But I think we found it on the internet one day recently that it's still there. It looked a little different, but it's still there.
And that's always like cool to see, like those buildings that you have a lot of history with, where they get to still stand and be what they were
Yeah.
originally. So whenever you talk about all this, and like you're talking about spanning these years and dedicating so much time to it, What was it that brought you back to El Paso, or what was it that kind of, made you say, okay, and now I want to take a different direction? Because you mentioned a little earlier that you were managing a group as well.
Well, the managing part, all of that, actually, with the three groups that I had on the road, I was the manager of, let's see, two of them. The first one I wasn't. The second one and third one I was, and basically, all I was doing as a manager was staying in touch with the agents and keeping the band booked and working and everything and taking care of getting us paid and paying the guys and all of that. From the standpoint of control of the band or whatever, we all had an equal say. We were never being controlled per se by somebody else that says you've got to do it this way or whatever. We were kind of growing together and doing our own thing. The last band that I managed, PT and the Cruisers, that's been about 3 years now since that group has been together as that group. It was Patty Tiscareño. She's the PT of PT and the Cruisers, and so that's when I became a full-blown manager, working with her and her band, and one of El Paso's very best. They're all great musicians that are still playing. Uh, as far as coming back to El Paso, to answer that question, uh, the main reason why we came back to El Paso was because my wife's parents and my parents were still living here. And we felt like, we've done this for 6 years on the road. It was a great ride for most of it. But we thought, we want to have a family now. We want to have our own kids, and have that experience, and have a regular doctor that we can go and see all the time when we need to, and when you're on the road, that doesn't happen, man. I mean, I remember like in Lake Tahoe when we were playing one of those weeks, we all came down with the flu. And I mean, when that curtain opens and the floodlights come on you, man, the show must go on. And I tell you that having 101-degree temperature, 102, whatever it was, and feeling like, crud, it was, but yet we still got up there and did it. And you get tired of that after a while, man. You do it for a long time, and you don't have a place to hang your hat all the time. So coming back to El Paso was going to be special for us because we wanted to have a family. My wife and I wanted to have a family. Plus, we wanted to be with our parents for the rest of their lives. They were both getting up there in age, all of them, and they've all passed now. But I wanted to be here during that, the rest of their lives, and then raise our own kids, which we did. And now our kids both live in Austin. When they graduated from UT Austin, they decided they still love Austin and they're still there, so, and we're here, so, but at times we've talked about what would it have been like if we'd have stayed out in LA, and I think if we had have, I'd have definitely stayed in the music business, because I was being exposed to great musicians. I studied with some of the best in the business, and it would have just, I think, escalated from there. I don't know if I would have ever been good enough to be um, a studio drummer, working in a studio all the time, but I definitely would have done a lot more studio work because I really enjoyed doing it, and I loved producing and making our own records and stuff. That was a lot of fun. But coming back to El Paso was important. It was it was like my wife gave me the opportunity to do this. We did it together. Now I need to do this for her and our families, to come back here and have kids and be with our families.
So whenever you first moved back to El Paso, because I know how it was. Like whenever I was in the military, you move back to, you get so used to a certain type of lifestyle. How hard was it to, one, like stay away, like say, look, I don't want to go back on the road, I'm not going to do this anymore? How hard was that for you? And then what was it that you kind of started doing whenever you got back to El Paso?
Great question. When I got back here, I didn't really want to play my drums that much anymore. Um, I did miss being on the road and performing, and that magnetism of musician and audience being validated. That was very. I miss that a lot. I really do. I miss the vocal performance a lot because I think that was really my best asset. You know, I was a decent drummer. You know, I played okay, but I think coming back here, I still wanted to sing, and yeah, I got an 8 to 5 job, and did it, and learned and grew with that. But I also, when I started having kids in 1983, you got to remember I got off the road in '78, and we had our first child in 1983, and it was probably 5 or 6 years later that I still wanted to continue singing. And so I auditioned for the Bruce Nearing Consort, which was part of Pro Musica back when it first started. Pro Musica now is Zool Bailey, but back in the first part of Pro Musica, it was the Bruce Nearing Consort. Uh, and that's who I sang with. And these were the best voices of El Paso in a choir, and they still are. You know, uh, I was a part of that and loved it. The only thing is, my kids were young, and you know, I needed to, as they got older, I needed to be there more there for them to help them develop and do things. Like my wife, she was always there as a room mother working with the kids, you know, in the schools, and we were always busy with PTA and doing all that stuff. And then as our kids get older and more competitive, we did the T-ball thing and the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts and Eagle Scout, science fairs, all of that stuff. And we wanted to be a part of that, you know, because you show me an active parent and I'll show you the kid that reaps the rewards of that. And that's how we wanted to be. We wanted to be that kind of parent for our kids, and make sure that we were always there for them, and teach them the right thing, you know, the right things to do, and how to have respect for people, and you know, all the things that we need to do as parents, you know. And you know, I'm sure you know the value of that, you know, because you are one. And so that that's been a major part of our lives, and our kids are still, to this day, you know, I glad to say, because I know many kids, once they leave the nest and go away, they're doing their own thing. But you know, we talk to our kids every day, at least 2 or 3 times. And now with the COVID-19 thing and everything, we're doing more Zoom calls and Skype and FaceTime and everything than we've ever done in our lives, you know. So I got to say, from that standpoint, we're closer to our kids now than we've ever been, and we were always close before, you know. So
Well, would you say that that's like the way that you grew up as well? Because I'll just equate it to like my personal experience. So whenever I left El Paso, I didn't really speak to my parents. As a matter of fact, I didn't speak to my parents until, I mean, it might have been like 4 or 5 years after I had, like, you know, set up and started doing my own thing. And the reason why I did is because I had a daughter that passed away. And that, you know, whenever you learn like, hey, my mother had something like that happen to her, my sister had something like that happen to her, it kind of brings you together and you think to yourself like of all the time that you missed. So for me, there was like a lot of that regret there. Would you say that that's kind of the way that you grew up, was like you already had those really tight family bonds?
well, my family, without going too deep into this, my family upbringing was quite unusual. I had a mother that had uh, she had issues, okay, and with alcohol and drug abuse, because of pain that she had because of her, you know, of her medical situation. And so she was not the ideal mother that I would have loved to have had. She did the best that she could, you know, and so yeah, I grew up in that environment. Uh, it was a tough one, but I had a very caring father and a caring mother. I mean, they were both great parents. Don't get me wrong. It's just that, you know, from an involvement standpoint, uh, let's say we're giving our kids a lot more uh, prime time, if you will, you know, uh, quality time as they're growing up, and being supportive of that. And, there might be a little bit of, I don't want to say overcompensation because I didn't have it as a developing youngster, but I think at the same time you reap what you sow, and I'm just glad that we were able to do this and be here and raise the kids that we did. They both turned out really great. They were both achievers in school. Our daughter, I mean, they both were in the top 5% of their class. Our daughter, just to give her a little selfless, brag here a moment, but our daughter was chosen out of the optimists. They have a thing that they would honor the top junior and senior boy and girl in El Paso out of 42 high schools. And our daughter got it as her junior year, and my son got it as a junior year. And then the senior year, my daughter got it again, and she got top senior girl out of 42 high schools in El Paso. And that's basically meeting the criteria and everything that they had, that the optimists had to make that achievement. But I've got to say that because of the encouragement and everything that we gave our kids to be joiners, get in national honor, uh, get on the high Q team, do all of the uh, destination imagination, and compete with the other schools and learn what that's all about, and get self-confidence, and learn how to interact and work with other kids, on a team, and the team concept and all of that, and I think, and I got to say that with my son, he became an Eagle Scout. I missed becoming an Eagle Scout by 2 merit badges, and I think basically what got in the way was playing drums and girls, you know. I didn't get my Eagle, and I wish I had him, but my son did, and it was great being on that ride with him because I was one of the assistant scout leaders, and so I went on the large 50-mile hikes over a 2-week period at, up in, Tiburon, where the scout camp up there, and not Tiburon, in up in New Mexico near Taos, the scout ranch up there. And it was incredible, a great experience, just being a part of that ride with him, and growing with it, and then you reap the rewards later. You may not know it when you're doing it, but I think over the long haul, when you finally got it, then you think, hey, that was well worth doing.
It's always time well spent whenever you get to spend it with your kids, and I will 100%
No doubt.
go on that.
You bet, man.
So,
Take every minute you can,
oh, trust me, I'm the youngest of 11, so I know what it was like not to have like a lot
Wow.
of quality time. So now I got 2 of them. I think I'm gonna be that dad where like I'm just there, and they're gonna get super annoyed, but maybe they'll appreciate it as they get older.
Oh, they will. But I'll tell you this, man, as they get older, uh, it doesn't get it doesn't get easier. But but that's all right, it, because at times, you wonder why I lost all my hair. Oh, it's it can be pretty trying at times, but at the same time, man, they're the greatest. They really are 2 great kids, and they do anything for us, and we do anything for them, and you can't ask for more than that, man. Yeah, that's where it's at.
So as you look at like the landscape of everything going around here in like the city of El Paso, and the way that the city of El Paso has evolved from getting into music early on in your youth, and then where it is now, what's the music scene been like here? Has it been pretty stagnant? Has it grown? Like what do you see whenever you look at the music scene now?
Well, the music scene now, I have to compare it back to what it was in my heyday. I mean, back when I was starting to play, there were clubs all over El Paso, man, all up and down Dyer Street, downtown, the Green Frog, the Yellow Submarine, um, God, just the International Club. My friend Ron and Sue Gordon, they had a club there called the International Club. A lot of bands played there. In fact, I had a guy reach out to me today that texted me that saw my blog site, and he used to be part of a band that was playing there at the International Club, and he's wanting to hook up with me a little bit and talk. So reached back out to him and said, we definitely will do that in a few days. Um, Back then, there was a lot of places to perform and play. It was really great. Now, for those of us that felt like we needed to go a step beyond that, and there were quite a few of us that left El Paso to seek, greener pastures. We wanted to go to the next level and be, you know, performing and recording, and you've got to go where the where the platforms are to see you, the other agents, the recording studios that would possibly pick you up and do a record deal or whatever. So that's why many of us left El Paso to go out there. Bobby Fuller went out to LA, in 63. And many of us followed that same path. It was either LA or New York. Those were the two kind of the hubs for entertainment and movie making and recording, music. So comparing those days to now, you just don't see that many clubs in El Paso now. There's still a few, maybe 4 or 5 that I can think of that have fairly regularly bands playing. Now there's some friends of mine that do a one-man show, and they'll still do that at a steakhouse now and then, or like I've got a good friend named Tim Thompson, and he's still out at the edge of Texas, and he'll perform out there. He's been out there for many years, and he quit for a while, but he's back out there again. And because and I haven't talked to him since I went out there, but some of the members of the PT and the Cruisers went out there fairly recently and had dinner and saw him, and I'm sure he's there again because he loves what he does. He's a musician, true blue, diehard musician, will always be that way. And he's doing what he loves. And he's also a music teacher in a high school here in town. I'm not going to get too personal with all that because I don't know if he'd want me to be saying all this everywhere. But the whole thing is that the music complexion in El Paso has changed tremendously. I'm not happy about that. I would much rather see it vibrant like it was back when we had a whole lot of clubs and a whole lot of places and options for the bands to go and play. Those were great times. That was a great period to be able to go from club to club and see bands and see what was going on and seeing the talent. El Paso had incredible talent for musicians. When I did my Border Legends series, Michael, we started in 2009 and went to 2016. My last year, it was either 2015 or 2016, my wife and I figured out how many people came to El Paso to see our show. And we counted at least 25 different states of people that have left El Paso that, but they knew we were, staying in touch by the internet and everything about our annual show called Border Legends of El Paso. And that was pretty exciting for me to bring back a band like the Chains or the Henchmen or Rod Crosby and the Intruders or Bobby and the Premiers, some of these bands that paved the way back in the days. And they really were great musicians, great bands. And these guys like the Chains, for example, they hadn't played together in over 39, 40 years, whatever it was. When I called Roy Penny and I asked him, in Florida, I said, Roy, would you guys entertain reuniting your group and coming back to El Paso and play our show? And he got on the horn and called the guys, and one of them was up near Santa Fe. The others were San Antonio, Dallas-based area. The other one was, and he was out in Florida selling yachts. That was his job, his business. They came back to El Paso, man, and they rehearsed for a couple of days uh, out at the Almeida where we were in the bar area. They closed them off in there and let them do their thing for a couple of days of rehearse, and they got up there and hit it out of the park. And it was so great. And the whole idea with that was that any of the bands that were going to play, I said, look, this is not about perfection. This is not about being as great as you were back in the day, because when you haven't played in 39 or 40 years, chances are you're going to be pretty rusty, you know? But that being said, many of these bands came in here and it just seemed like they had been doing it for all these years. I guess when you got it, you know. And Bobby and the Premiers, those guys, they got up there and they really just did a yeoman's job. They excelled. They really, and I think a lot of it was adrenaline, the moment that I was telling you about, that validation, that magnetism between audience and performer. There's nothing like that high, man. There's nothing like it. When you get a standing ovation, people are saying, "Yeah, I liked what you did." You know, that is just the most incredible experience that an entertainer can have. And putting guys like that up on the stage to reunite and El Paso supporting it, we had to do it. We had to do it as long as we could, you know. And I wanted to go 10 years, but it looks like 8 was going to be our magic number. Too many things changed. The venue changed. My co-producer, you know, Rod Crosby, he needed to think more about retirement, and so there was economics of doing this, because it takes a lot of toll on you to put on a show like this. You know, it would take me a whole year to plan this thing and put it together, but well worth it. And I'd do it again if I could, you know. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to do my podcast and talk to my musician brothers. And yeah, and you said it's a wide spread there between talk and rock, and that's kind of the reason why I chose that name, because I want to be able to talk to anybody if they have stories that will engage the public and bring inspiration. And I think that's what a lot of my mantra is going to be, is sharing stories with people that matter, that they want to hear. The audience wants to hear these stories. I know they do. I know the musician stories will be entertaining and very interesting. A lot of my audience is going to hear stories that they've never heard before. And if we can tell stories that will encourage and inspire future musicians to go and do what we did and do it better, then God bless them. You know, that's what I want to see happen. I think other people, though, they need to tell their stories. And I've got so many great friends out there that have accomplished some major things in their lives, and have had fun along the way doing it. And I've kept those relationships going with them. And I want to get them on my podcast and talk about those stories. And it won't always be music. I'm going to say 80 to 90% of my stories are going to be music, you know, pointed towards music. But I think if I can bring some other inspiring tales of lore, then we'll do that too. It'll be fun.
So I've got like I guess a two-part question for you whenever we talk about that, because we spoke about the changing landscape in the city of El Paso, you know, musically, like with venues for places to go. One, how do we re-inject that life into the landscape here in El Paso? And then secondly, what would you have to say to that young aspiring artist who looks around and sees basically a barren desert of, like you said, 4 or 5 clubs that might do something with you?
You know, El Paso is no different than any other city, except, well, let me back up with that one. We had so many great entertainers, musicians that left El Paso to go do bigger and better things, and they did. And but I think every city's got good musicians. Um, if they don't have a place to be able to grow and 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 show their talent. That is so sad. And now with what's going on with COVID and in our world, I mean, it's been a year now, almost a year, that we've seen that, like South by Southwest in Austin, they can't do their things. Coachella, they can't do their thing out in California. We can't see Austin City Limits at the Moody Theater in Austin now. I mention all these things because my son's a photographer for Getty Images, and he hasn't done any red carpets or any shows. He was photographing, Paul McCartney and Willie Nelson and all these people on a weekly basis. And this stuff it's been drastically affected by what's going on in the country today. And do we know when this is going to end? No, we don't know when it's going to end. But when it does, I hope the clubs can come back vibrantly again. I hope, because I know the musicians, they're going to want to play. They're going to want to still do their thing. That's always going to be there. Um, as far as what's going to happen in El Paso, I mean, I've seen even before COVID hit here, I saw clubs dying. Restaurants are, they're not, the showrooms are not showrooms. They're more like just a bar with a dance floor. And I think a lot of this changed when the bar owners decided that, number one, they couldn't afford the musicians to play. Of course, a lot of that depends on where you're at. I mean, like in Austin, because it's a music capital of the United States, people, the bars there, I mean, musicians will go and play for free just to get the exposure and and develop the audience base, the following and everything. And that's what it's become. In Austin, it became that way, not to drift off so much away from El Paso, but I got to tell you, in contrast, what other cities are doing in comparison to, the drastic difference here is that we've got musicians that want to make a living. And when you can't make that much money, then there's a reason why so many musicians leave El Paso, because the whole stage is, changed as far as places to be able to perform and um, showcase your talent. Um, I hope to see someday, the good rooms again. I would love to see that in El Paso. I don't know if it'll happen. I've seen so many wonderful places that, like, when I was playing in college, the Knights Club was one of the places to play in El Paso. And but we were fortunate enough to be the house band that played there for, almost my whole 4 years of going to college. I mean, what a neat gig, man! Be able to play every night, and have a few brewskis and do your thing, and then do your studies, go to school the next day, come back and do it again. It's just it was a neat gig, but there's no place in El Paso that offers that today. You know, um, the band PT and the Cruisers that I've referred to numerous times. One of the owners of that, one of the members of that band, Buddy Winston, he owns a really just great recording studio called Star City Studios here in El Paso. And they have a performance studio as part of that. They have 3 rooms, studio A, B, and C. And C is their big room. They can put like about 120 people in there seated. And they can put shows in there. And they've done a lot of them. I booked about 2 or 3 of them in there. And besides the Cruisers, which that's their home base now, they'll perform in there behind other entertainers if they want somebody to perform behind them, or they'll just do their own show. Um, and thank God we've got that place. It's a beautiful venue, beautiful studio with first class, top flight equipment. Um, it's great that they are able to offer a place for entertainers to come in, and we've had some really nice shows in there, and some of them are from out of town. Some fairly big name entertainers, and uh, do a nice job. Um, but it would be nice to see more rooms open up that serve dinner, that do shows. Uh, I always wanted, if I ever hit the big time, with the lottery, I would have loved to put in a really neat museum like place that would have the history of El Paso rock and roll, a place to put up, Dalton Powell's drum kit from the Bobby Fuller Four, and just, musicians that have come and gone, but had a lot of really neat memorabilia that could be put in there and seen, whenever anybody wanted to go and check out the history of El Paso rock. And then I would have loved to have had a performance hall attached to that museum, where two of them, I would love to have two performance halls, one for standing room only and one for dinner theater, a dinner concert. Uh, and one would be smaller than the other. The other would be on the likes of, say, the Plaza Theater, maybe a little bit smaller, uh, but still be able to seat about 1,200 people. And we don't have that anymore. I mean, yeah, we've got the Plaza, and we've got the Civic Center, Abraham Chavez and all that, but who knows what's going to become with that down there. There's so much controversy and everything. Hopefully that'll become something better. They say it's in kind of dire straits. It needs to have a lot of work done on the stage and the performance hall itself. So I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see, man. Go from there.
I've often said, and I don't want to get like on the political side of what's going on with downtown El Paso and all that, but I've often said that there's that area that of a certain side of the town that shall not be named. It starts with a D. I'm sure you know where it's at. But I've said that since there's been so much damage done to those buildings right now, why not have like an outdoor clamshell, kind of like what they have in Boston, where you can have like that outdoor venue that can still also hold, concerts, and like you could utilize that and build up the city of El Paso, because there's so much talent here whenever it comes to music, but I don't feel like they have the platforms they deserve.
You're singing my song, Michael. Why don't you go join? Go get elected, man. We need you on city council. You know.
I,
Um,
I've made the joke for the better part of like 5 years that I was going to run for mayor. And believe it or not, I have like a whole crew of people behind me that want to do like advertising and like all this stuff. I have no idea how I will be a mayor, but I feel like eventually it's going to happen.
hey, man, go for it. I'll be one of your head cheerleaders. No, I would. I always, I used to be on the El Paso Historical Commission, and with Bernie Sargent and Max Grossman, and dear friends of mine to this day. And you know, we fought the battle, and we did great things, and we continue to want to see things like that uh, grow in El Paso. But at the same time, I think what I would love to see happen downtown would be like we've seen in San Diego, or in Tucson, or Albuquerque, like the Riverwalk, with all of the history down there and everything that they've done. I would love to, we could maybe never do it on that scale. First of all, we don't have the water to do it, but it would be great to have that whole thing downtown be a place where we could see ballet folklorico, or we could see the history of Pancho Villa, and all of our tremendous El Paso patrimony, man. We have such great historic patrimony here. And it would be so incredible to have a place where people could walk around and see really neat shops and restaurants with outdoor dining, and a stage, like you said, where people could sit around and take in, a show, with a clamshell or whatever, like you said. And that would be really exciting. And that would be the ultimate wish that I have for my city, is to have something like that. Um, we have such incredible talent here in this city, and we're not using it the way we could be. uh, and all they do is have a lot of issues down there and fight back and forth, but they're not getting it done. And they could get it done if we had the right people in there really rallying and really doing it. And I think we've got some great people that are still on the council, and we've got a new mayor, and we'll see how he does. He was there before, and I have a lot of respect for Oscar Leeser. He's been a client of mine for years, and I have a lot of respect for him. So we fingers crossed that we can get some things happening down there. We've got some exciting things happening with the historical registry and everything that's just taken place, and we'll just see where it goes from there. I hope we can see this thing develop into an old town El Paso. We certainly have the infrastructure, and we have the talent, and we have the herewithal to make that happen.
I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens, but the one thing I know needs to happen is we need to inject that life once again into the music and the arts that we have here in El Paso, because like you said, we have so much talent here that needs to, that deserves to get those highlights and get those recognitions and get those gigs as well.
Good, yeah, good point, man. Yeah, we really do. And and hopefully it'll happen. We keep our fingers crossed, say our prayers, and you never know. But we got people that are on the front lines that have some tremendous energy, and we just have to keep supporting and see how it plays out.
Rick Kern, soon to be dropping his new podcast, Talk and Rock Radio. I'm looking forward to that. Trust me, I could make this a 3-hour podcast if we wanted to, but I will not do that to you. I'm sure you've got a life that you would like to get back to as well. Where will the podcast be whenever you drop it? And of course, where can people visit and look at some of the stuff that you've done as well?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is get hold of Jackson Polk over at, Jackson over at El Paso History Radio, and have him give me some selfless plugs, and Barbara Gibbon Bainey with her history site on Facebook, and of course I'm going to reach out to all my Facebook friends and everything, and I'll be letting you all know for sure, man. And it'll be on Facebook, it'll be on YouTube, probably iTunes, Spotify, all of those. There's a whole bunch of them, and I'll be working with a hosting group that will spider it out to all the social platforms that there are out there, and hopefully everybody will like what they see and hear, and subscribe and tell their friends, and if you like it, tell the world. I've already got a friend in Ireland, and he's all excited about it, and he wants to be a part of it. In fact, we're going to do an episode together, because he's a bass player with one of the top bands in the UK. They're called the Urge. A little selfless plug for the Urge, but they are an incredible cover band. They are Ireland's #1 wedding band. They play like 5 or 6 nights a week for weddings, and they play it all, man. They do like everything from Toto to Bobby Fuller to Johnny Cash to, you name it. They do it all, man. Freddie Fender. They're a neat group, and so you'll be able to hear about what's going on. But if you like what you hear, just tell your friends. I really believe in this project, and I want to see it happen. And I can't do it by myself. I'm going to need a lot of support out there, but I think there's going to be some fellow podcasters like yourself that are going to like it, and hopefully I can do some guest appearances with them, and they'll be doing some with me. I've already got some of those already lined up, and so looking forward to doing that. But next time you see me, it'll look a lot better than it does right now. I'm just using a little cheapy LED light. I got my ring light coming in on Friday, so this studio is going to start looking more like a real studio here pretty soon. So
When I tell you that ring light changes lives, it makes me look pretty. It can make anyone else out there look pretty.
Yeah, man, you look great. I mean, your skin tones are great, man. I look like a red lobster, man,
we
Uh,
we should have waited for that ring light, but I got greedy. I apologize.
that's all right. We can do this again, man. I don't care.
Rick, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend, and I'm looking forward to the next time we do this. And of course, I'm looking forward to the launch of Talk and Rock Radio with our guy Rick Kern. Rick, thank you so much.
Michael, you rock, my friend. Thank you, man, and love you. See you around, okay?